Hello and welcome back to The Stories That Brought You Here. It's the podcast dedicated to the stories of the people from Pender Island, British Columbia. Once again, I am your host, Chris Wakaluk, and I'll be sitting down in one-on-one, hour-long conversations with current Pender Island residents to hear the stories that brought them to this funny little island we live on, and to also hear the stories that brought them to the point that they're at in their lives right now. Today, I'll be speaking with John Miles. Now, if you know John, like I know John, then you're going to know him as that guy that used to own Southridge. That's that country store located on Port Wash Road on the North Island. Well, we're going to get to hear John talk about his experience running that store along with many other things. We'll get to hear John talk about how he wound up coming to Canada in the first place from the UK. We'll get to hear John tell the interesting story of how he wound up buying Southridge in the first place and moving to Pender Island. He'll talk about his love of the city of Paris. We'll also get to hear John talk about his little dog, Vinny. Yes, John has a little dog named Vinny. All that and so much more in this interview with a guy I really love. I think John's just great. And he and I have a very similar sense of humor, and I have always enjoyed joking around with John. So I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I enjoyed giving it. So without further ado, here's my interview with John Miles. Hey, John, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Chris.
How's your day been so far?
So far, so good. Talking to you.
Talking to me. Right on. I know we got an early start for this one. You decided
and using Google to get here, which was made it a lot easier.
Yeah. You said, oh, no, I have to go to Tragic Lake.
Yeah, that's right. It's a minefield for those of us who don't live here.
It is. It's a minefieldy maze. But in the daytime, it's a little bit better, though.
Well, yes, it wasn't dark.
No. But like when you come here in the dark, some people can get
terrible. I've been lost in Magic Lake. I got lost at the Lantern Festival one year. I could not find my car.
Oh, really?
I did eventually, but then I went to somebody's house and drank too much. And I couldn't drive home. So anyway, that's another story, which probably shouldn't be part of this.
Well, it could be. Okay, the night John drank too much at the Lantern Festival. For the people who don't know, the Lantern Festival is a New Year's celebration. Mm-hmm. So drinking and New Year's go together.
Well, this was after that. And yeah, I was plied with too much liquor.
Okay.
It's not my fault.
It's the liquor's fault?
The host's fault.
Oh, the host's fault. Okay. Well, at least they gave you a place to sleep.
No, they didn't.
What?
I got home, yeah.
Okay. All right. That is a whole nother story we should not touch on right now.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Well, now that we've gone there, let's go to our traditional first question, which is, of course, what brought you to Pender Island?
Pender Island. What brought me to Pender Island? I have to give you a bit of backstory before I get to that, I think, because the coming to Pender Island just happened at another point in my life. If I could go back a little further than that,
yeah, definitely.
And, actually coming to the country in the first place, which was in 1966, and I was married with one small child and a boy. So I wanted to come for a long time to Canada, having thought about it when I was really quite young, before I was a teenager. I think it was probably from a radio program, and I can't even remember what the radio program was called in Britain, but I remember the theme song of it, which was, "See the redcoats riding through the Rocky Mountains, see the horses brown and black and bay." And I remember having an argument with my friend at the time that there's no such thing as a bay horse. What's a bay horse? It must have been gray. And he said, no, there's a bay horse. And so we had an argument about that. But anyway, that's the first memory that I have of wanting to come to Canada. And so moving further on, it was always a thought in the back of my mind that this new world country, which was not the United States and it was not somewhere else, but it was a specific destination that I wanted to reach, not realizing that once I'd gone through all the immigration nonsense and we'd made the decision to come, that we'd end up in Saskatchewan first. It was good. It was good. Saskatchewan was great. Regina was great. Bloody cold, but really great. So I moved around Saskatchewan a bit, had a job in the same business in Canada, was with a company called Dunlop Tire, which I'm not even sure if they still exist. It was a giant corporation at one time, and I think it probably got taken over. And I worked for them selling tires, theoretically, in southern Saskatchewan, which was a great education to Canada and Saskatchewan and the way people are and, going and driving. They gave me a car. I drove around southern Saskatchewan going for, different towns, Gravelbourg, La Flèche, a couple that come to mind, getting lost in all the crossroads that there are out there in the gravel roads, and asking kids, what's this next town like? Is it big enough? I'm thinking, is it big enough for them to have a place that would buy tires? And they say, well, it's a 3-elevator town, and so that's just another incident where I learned about Saskatchewan a little bit more. So I lived there for some time, doing that job for a short time, then went back into what I had previously done, which was to sell paper products, business forms, and that kind of thing. So I did that relatively successfully for quite a few years until I got another job. Eventually took me to Calgary and then to Victoria. I'm cutting out a lot of nonsense here, Chris.
Okay, no worries. Yeah.
And so ended up in Victoria doing much the same, running a small printing plant there, actually, and managing it and dealing with the government. And that was quite successful for a while until the company got sold. And ultimately, I didn't go with the second owners and was out on my ear, basically. And at that point, I was like, I actually I wasn't out on my ear. I had a 3-year contract with them where I had to do very little and got paid for it. So being a lazy person, I took that and then ultimately went for a stress day to Main Island, looked at it, thought, it's okay. But I can't imagine wanting to be here. Going back to Victoria, where we had a fairly nice life in a fairly nice house and that sort of thing. And found an ad in the paper. It said, grocery store for sale. This was on another stress day, and we looked in the paper on the very day that we were going in. And this is me and my wife, actually, and went to Pender Island, came to Pender Island, and thought, well, this isn't too bad, and this is a store. It's called Southridge Country Store. It's got some potential, but, I don't have any money. I wonder if he'd take a trade of my house, and so we basically did that. Then the question was going back to the bank, borrowing some money to operate the store, and did that for a few years. Tough going at first, very tough going. However, didn't go broke, didn't go bankrupt. But at some point, my wife left, we split up, and we then had to go back to the bank and borrow some more money, bigger mortgage to make a settlement, and also get some more money to run the store. So then things started to take off as I changed the theme of the store. It was always an organic store, but we pushed that a little harder and did a few more things and did that for 21 years.
Well, I just want to back it up a little bit here and just recap. So you're living in Victoria, and then it was a printing business that you were working for?
Yeah, so I was actually living in North Saanich, and then the printing business was in Victoria.
Okay. All right. So then things are going the wrong direction with that business. And then you said on a couple stress days, you decided to take a look at some opportunities, perhaps in the Gulf Islands. What made you attracted to looking at the Gulf Islands?
I don't think I was specifically looking at the Gulf Islands at that time, although many, many years before, my wife and kids went back to England for my daughter to be christened. And I was having some kind of problem with going to church at that time, not wanting to go to church, not wanting to be part of this, even though my son had been christened and I'd been christened or baptized, as they call it. But anyway, that's why. And I got in my, I think it was a 1967 Corvair, and drove out to the West Coast while the family went to England. And I would like to say adventures ensued, but they didn't really. I went to various different places, across the line to Seattle for some crazy reason, turned around and came back pretty quick. And the thing that I remember most probably about the trip, because I don't remember a lot about it, was going on the ferry, first time I'd ever been on a ferry, and seeing the Gulf Islands. As I thought, well, gosh, I'll never live here. This is so beautiful that I would love to live here, but I can't imagine that I could live anywhere as beautiful as Victoria and the Gulf Islands, you know. And that didn't transpire until many years later, when my job, such as it was, went away. And I'm going to repeat myself here.
That's okay.
I was looking in the newspaper on the day that we were going to go on a trip to the Gulf Islands, this time to Pender Island. We'd been to Main Island before, didn't like it. Went to Galiano as well, stayed over in Galiano, and they were nice. Somehow, for me at that time, being a city boy, probably slightly creepy. But when we were going to Pender Island, have a look at that, picked up a newspaper on the same day, and there was an ad in there for a general store for sale. And so I contacted the realtor, and as we went over on the ferry, we, not unbeknown to us, she was actually sitting right there.
Oh, really? She was at Southridge at that time. Okay.
No, on the ferry.
Oh, on the ferry. Okay.
She was sitting on the ferry going over at the same time. So we met each other actually on the other side, and went and looked at the store, and I could say the rest is history, but there's quite a lot more to it. But
okay, well, let's try to pick out the pieces a little bit here, because it's interesting that from an ad in the newspaper to looking at a country store, not really having any background, I assume, with owning a retail store up until this point. Is that correct? Never thought I'd do.
I was in retail when I first left school, but never thought I'd own. Never really wanted anything like that.
Yeah, but I guess an opportunity was happening in your life because something was being taken away, a job that you knew and were familiar with, and you're looking for a new opportunity. And then this comes up. And so it's making a pretty big plunge that, okay, we don't have the money for this right now, but how about we do a tradesies with our house in this store? And then the previous owner said yes.
That's right. And it came with a house. So I didn't have to worry about a house as well. The house was separate from the store, but it was on the same property. And I thought, it's not a bad deal. 2.3 acres and a house and a store.
And what year was this in, John?
Good question. 22 years away from back from now. What is that?
22 years from
Oh, it was 1996. I remember now.
1996. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah.
So you had this prior experience about going on a road trip years earlier, seeing the Gulf Islands, telling yourself, wow, I don't think I could imagine living there. So how did you feel when that happened and you bought the store, and then first few months of living on the island, how did that feel for you?
Well, it was, if you look back to 1996, 97, it was one of the worst winters we'd ever had. And so the van that I'd taken with the business, which was a big old cube van that Arnie had been driving around, and Arnie was the guy that owned the store before me, as some of you may remember, and the snow was deep. Luckily, we'd come over in a Subaru, which has four-wheel drive, and I was able to go and at least buy milk and bread to bring back. So we kept things going through that. It was an introduction to life on Pender Island that you could never be sure of what's going to happen next, whether it's going to rain so much, or it's going to snow, or it's going to be so hot that you don't know what to do with yourself, So, but all in all, good.
Because did you purchase the business just before winter in the fall time? Is that when?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
you move in, winter slams you guys, and then you're sort of scrambling to kind of keep up with running a business and getting around the island and getting supplies in there.
That's right. Yeah, and so went back from that to then driving the big van and going and picking stuff up and making more connections, perhaps than had before. Started. It was going okay at that point. I wouldn't say it was going well. Maybe breaking even, maybe not. Not sure in the first 2 or 3 years, and then I'm going back to the fact that my wife left, and at that point, I think I thought, well, okay, it's an organic store. We need to do that. That's great, but we need another hook. And at that point, I hadn't made any contacts with the Italian guys. So, because I thought that Italian food is so great because it can be as complicated as you like and as simple as you like. And if somebody's got pasta and they've got sauce, they've got a meal.
It's true.
So, a little bit of sausage or something. I'm just remembering my meal from last night. Now,
wait, what was your meal last night?
Hot Italian sausage.
Hot Italian sausage.
Sauce.
With pasta?
With pasta.
With pasta.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the sausage is cooked into the sauce. It was very, really, very quite hot.
We had a vegetarian lasagna last night, and we were just commenting on the amount of variations of Italian pasta dishes you can have last night.
It's a good thing, like if it works for vegetarians as well as carnivores like me, which is incidentally where I bought the sausages.
So you made the contacts with the Italian distributors?
So then, in fact, I started off with one. I went to a show. Everything sort of worked quite well together. I went to a show of Italian suppliers and talked to several of them. Started doing business with one. Great people to deal with, actually. And I have a sort of strange affinity for Italians. I really love the way that they live. It's so unlike the British. British people tend to be somewhat closed, although they can be very funny. Italians are ebullient and they say what they think, and it's a lot of fun dealing with those guys. In fact, since I sold the store, I haven't been back to talk to them, and the weather hasn't been good, or I'm building a house, whatever. But I have to go back and talk to them again because they're such lovely people. So I ended up with 3 suppliers, three Italian suppliers. So 3 different kinds of pastas, 3 different kind of brands of pasta, many different kinds of pasta, and different kinds of sauce, different kinds of everything, So that was a good move. And that worked quite well for me, and added to that the organic food that we were selling, lots of veggies, lots of well-farmed meat, staying away as much as possible from the stuff that would be sold at a bigger store, no names, and a place I now shop. You can cut that piece out.
We're leaving that piece in. That's okay. All right. So, it's interesting. I just want to stick with Southridge for a little bit longer here and just find out a little bit more, because just as you're speaking about the day-to-day workings of running a store and decisions you have to make in order to get more clientele in and figure that out. And you said that once you established more organics and then the Italian foods, you felt as if you had more people coming in and buying goods from you, right?
Correct.
And so is that the early 2000s we're talking about that happened? So you bought it in 96 and... Yes,
we're into the 2000s now. I am, my wife left earlier than that, and I'm totally focused on the store, basically, at this point. The store and not a huge personal life.
It was taking up a lot of your time.
It was taking up a lot of time, yeah.
Okay.
But I enjoyed it, so... It was good. The only thing about when you run a small store on Pender Island, and people should perhaps remember this, any kind of small store, but particularly a grocery store, is that getting up at 1 o'clock in the morning when the power is out and putting generators on is not a lot of fun.
Not a lot of fun.
Not a lot of fun.
Not kind of fun.
To be out there in your pajamas and house coat or whatever. And, that was hard. But, there's a sense of triumph when you actually get things running and keep things running and go in the morning and people still show up to shop. It was good, even in the dark, So, I got a lot of support.
Nice. Mm-hmm. And so I've always seen you as such a pertinent member of the community because you are in an establishment ever since I came to the island. Oh, there's John from Southridge. And, every time you go in there, you were there and have some great joking around with you as we do. But it's interesting as you're explaining how much time that you had to put into it. How did you view your connection to the community? Because I'm sure you weren't necessarily going out a lot, just being busy with the store, and your interactions with the community were probably mostly based around the interactions at the store. But how did you feel about your inclusivity within the community during the time that you've been on Pender?
Well, I'm not a gregarious type of person, which may sound strange coming from a guy that had a store where you were talking to people all the time. So I made some friends there, but also at that time, the early days, were friends who had their own businesses on the island. So you have certain connections because you face similar problems and how to generate more business and that sort of thing. But as I said, I'm not a gregarious person, so I didn't make a lot of friends. The ones that I made became fast friends, I think, and lots of acquaintances, I would say, who didn't become close friends. And the islands are also a place where some people settle down and some people, and to my surprise, I settle down. But a lot of people come and go.
Sure.
And so you meet people and you think this is a good person. This is somebody I'd like to know better. And then they leave, because it's tough for some people to put down roots.
Absolutely it is,
on an island like this. You've got to find your own niche. So I had a lot more acquaintances than I had friends.
But it's interesting to hear you mention that you developed connections with other small business owners because the shared experiences of the ups and downs of running small businesses on the island. Mm-hmm. I never would have suspected that or thought of that, actually.
No, they're completely different businesses, generally speaking. I mean, we always talk. I mean, I would talk to the people at the hardware store about their, they had their own problems and successes, of course, as they're a very successful business. Christine, who had a shop at Hope Bay, who since given it up. But, it's a struggle to run a business on Pender Island sometimes. And especially if you're away from the driftwood. The driftwood is a draw and it is an attraction. So quite a few businesses succeed at driftwood where they won't at other small spots. I don't know if you want to keep this bit in.
No, that's okay. I think it's interesting. It's just really neat to get to hear a bit of a perspective on things because doing this podcast is not necessarily just for the current times. I think the historical aspect for people listening in the future to this to have some idea as to what things were like in the mid 90s versus 2019. It's really interesting. Yeah. And so these stories are great. But you recently sold Southridge. You recently moved on from that experience. And what made you say that it was time to let go of the store?
Age. Age. And I was getting to the point where I don't have to sell today, but I think I'm going to put the word out there that I would sell if the right person came along. So I definitely didn't want to put it through an agent. I had talked to one agent who's not normally... He's not one of the main agents on the island, but it's somebody I'd talked to before. His idea of what the place was worth and mine were completely different. He only could see it as a house with a little store attached, and I saw it as something completely different. And I knew that it was worth... it was a good business and becoming a better business all the time. With somebody new in there, it would be revitalized. And I think you're seeing that now. I think some money spent on it made it look a lot better than it was. But we were growing. I never paid too much attention to my balance sheet, to be honest. As long as I was paying my way, I was quite happy. But once I sold it, and looking back on the last 2 years, I was like, holy Dinah, I can't believe I made that much money in the last 2 years. And so, yeah, it was becoming quite successful at that point. There were a lot more people coming. And so the word got around. I think at some point I had, when I started the Italian stuff, I think in my head, I was looking for something to make Southridge a destination rather than just a place you happen upon.
Sure.
And, it's the place across from the hardware store. That's the way we would explain it. But at some point, I wanted to make it a destination of its own. And I think when we started to bring the Italian stuff in and start to get some vibe going, that's when it really took off. So that was just before I sold, really. The 2 years before I sold, that's when the vibe had worked and things were happening and it was good. And so I wish the new owners all the success in the world, and I hope it continues.
Nice. That's a really wonderful way to end off your business career with the store in such an upswing. I think that a lot of people who've owned businesses along the way have unfortunately had to shut them down because I've known a few people who have come and gone, and you have to have a certain amount of staying power, and you certainly don't need to be the person that needs a lot of money to live on. And I certainly didn't. I had the house, I had the store, had enough food forever. Any day of the week there was food. So that was never a problem. And as long as I had enough money to take off and go to the UK when I wanted to. First time there I was going once a year. And then I discovered Paris, and then I wanted to go there. What?
Again.
Okay, well, let's jump into that. So you're heading home roughly once a year, and why are you going home? What is it that's drawing you to go home that frequently?
Well, initially my mother was there, and she passed away while I had the store. And my dad had died earlier of a heart attack, quite young, really. It's something in my family, it goes through my family. And my brother had a heart attack, and my son passed away from a heart attack in 2011. Devastating. Tough to talk about.
Understandable. We don't have to go there if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. Do you want to? It sounds like you might want to talk about the history of heart problems in your family, or? Well,
I don't know what the history is, really. Probably maybe too much bacon. I don't know. My dad, I remember living in Pence, Saskatchewan when I got that news from he'd divorced from my mother, and was living with another woman who I knew, and had moved to Yorkshire in England. And I got the news from his new wife's son, which probably didn't thrill me that much getting it that way. It obviously didn't thrill me that my dad had passed away suddenly and I wasn't there. And there's no way I could get back. And so my brother, who was a lot younger than me, and I think only 19 at the time, was the one that had to carry the burden of going to the funeral and that kind of thing. And my dad was a well-loved man, manager at a cement company, and my brother went up there, and all the crane drivers dipped the cranes in salute. So it was kind of cool, but... And he had actually taken my brother to Nigeria when he went to Nigeria for a year or so, my dad, to run a cement plant to get him up and running in Nigeria. And my brother went over on a holiday. And so he's got pictures of himself in chief's robes at, the people there, and he had a good time, But, so my dad had passed away, and when I lived, as I say, in Pence, Saskatchewan, and then, my brother, quite a bit later, by this time I was on Pender Island when he had a heart attack. And I got that message. I wasn't at home at the time, and I got the message. And he survived. And as a lot of people do nowadays with stints in their hearts, and he survived and survives to this day, and is about twice as big as me, and a quite happy guy with 4 kids, and lives in the UK. So I like to go back and see him. And then later on, my mother passed away, and I went over for that funeral with my brother, and I've been going back fairly frequently ever since. And also at that point, at some point, I can't remember how many years ago now, but I discovered Paris as well and loved it.
What do you love about Paris so much?
I don't know. I just read books about any storybook about people that moved there. I went there with a woman that I was seeing at the time, living with actually, and we were thinking about buying a place in France. We went to other parts of France as well, but I kept going back to Paris after we broke up, and I think I've been there 6 times now. It's joie de vivre, I guess. It just doesn't matter where you walk in Paris. You'll see something new all the time. And
yeah.
It's I don't necessarily go there for the food. Some of it's good. Some of it's terrible. Some of it's really terrible.
Okay.
And so you avoid the tourist places as much as possible. And I stay at the same apartment every time. And
what district is that in?
It's in Montparnasse, which I find it's not actually central Paris, but I guess it kind of could be. There seem to be a lot of centers to Paris, Montmartre and Champs-Élysées, and they're all different, and it's all, everywhere you go is different in Paris. It's always something going on. Last time I went, there had been, as always, there were demonstrations and riots, and people had smashed windows, and the police were out in full force. There would be trains of, I call it trains, so many vehicles, all with the sirens going. They always have the sirens going all the time. And so there's, 20 cars or something in this, 20 vehicles. And they would go through. I don't know if they were just flying the flag or what, but that happened quite a bit while you're sitting at a sidewalk cafe.
I know what you mean. Actually, my wife and I were just there 2 years ago. Just over 2 years ago, and I'd been there once before, but she had never been there, so I got the experience to take Geneva over there, and that city is amazing. Mm-hmm. It's incredible. It's such a beautiful place, and there's just an infinite amount of wonderful things to do.
I could almost live in the Luxembourg Gardens. I don't know if you went there or not.
Oh yeah, twice in the same trip.
Yeah, it's always my go-to place. It's a cafe right outside. There is one inside actually as well, but there's one outside that I go for coffee and then walk across the road and into Luxembourg Gardens, do the whole walk all the way through there to the other end, and then there's restaurants. The other end is restaurants everywhere, and like I said before, some of them are good, some of them are terrible.
Well, we were actually just talking about this last night. We were reminiscing about the trip with a friend who was visiting, and Geneva was talking about eating tartare over there. Mm-hmm. So raw meat.
She's a lot braver than I am.
Me too. I didn't. She was trying to feed me a bite, and I said, "No, I don't want to. It's disgusting." But
I don't mind if it's a little rare, but not tartare.
I thought it was lasagna. It was unclear as to what was going on there, but it was good. But are you heading back to Paris anytime soon?
Well, I'm sure it's going to happen. Right now, I'm sort of focused on getting the house finished, and there's some work to be done. There's some landscape contracting to be done. There's some trim to be done in the house. I want to get all that finished before I go away. And then I'll see if there's any money left.
Good old house repairs. They suck up the expenses. Actually, that was something I wanted to talk about as well, too, is that your decision to remain on Pender Island after selling the store and the house where you lived included with it. But when we spoke before doing the interview, you mentioned that at first you were looking at moving off of Pender once you sold the store.
That's correct. I had... in fact, I told a lot of people I was going to move to Victoria or thereabouts. And I started to look at places that I would, single man, where are you going to live? Looked at condos, of course, because and townhouses, because you don't need anything too big, and certainly don't want to do too much housekeeping and that sort of thing. Not specifically me doesn't want to do too much housekeeping. Anyway, looked at some condos, went inside them, thought, oh my God, this is really not for me. Like used condos tend to have the look of the people that are in them now, and these are people of my age, but I don't necessarily feel that I'm that age. And so there's something drab about it. There's just something drab about it. And new condos are like new condos. Like, I don't need this. For some reason, there's something there that says, no, this is not me. And then somebody said to me, well, don't you have a lot of friends on Pender? I said, well, yeah, I kind of do, maybe. And then once I started looking back on Pender, and I was trying to find a house and didn't think there was going to be anything that I particularly liked, and then happened upon this place that had not been built as a residence in the first place, and it was built as something completely different, and had never been permitted as a residence, although it was being used for that purpose. So it became a project, a big project when I decided to buy this place. It's very small. But by the same token, the building inspector needed to meet 2017 code, which for those of you who don't know, I'll tell you now that your windows are not up to code unless your house was built in 2017. And they just look the same as the old ones, but apparently they're not. So all the windows had to come out of the house. All the doors had to come out of the house.
Wow.
The siding had to come off the house, and rain screen, you know what that is? Most people don't.
I'm going to say no, I don't know what it is.
That had to be installed, and it goes under the siding and presumably keeps the house from getting damp. So then we put some different siding on and did all those jobs that had to be done. I think it's to code now and almost finished. It hasn't had its final inspection yet, but it's pretty close to that. It's ready for it, really. So now I've got to make sure it's completely painted, finished the painting that I was doing myself. There's still work to be done outside. There's still trim to be done inside the house. But once that's done, it'll be great.
Okay.
It is. I love it. It's just very small, but it's big enough for me and my little tiny dog.
Your little tiny dog, what's your tiny dog's name?
My little tiny dog's name is Vinny.
Vinny?
Because he's got attitude, boy, I tell you.
Did he have attitude when you first got him? And you're like, I sensed the attitude right away.
Yeah, he had attitude. He's had it, yes. Yeah.
Right from the beginning.
He's a little tiny dog who thinks he can take on anything, any size of dog. So, yeah, he's a little thug.
That's part of being a little tiny dog is you have to imagine you can take on any other dog.
And he can, he just walks around like a little gangster.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of dog is Vinny?
He's largely Boston Terrier, apparently. That's what they said. And but he's got Chihuahua ears, so I know there's quite a mix in there. But he's great. Got a lot of personality.
Where'd you get Vinny from? How did you come across him?
My daughter's groomer had him, and he was causing a lot of trouble with her Chihuahuas. He wasn't bred there. He's had a challenged life. He's been up in the Okanagan and had been to various foster homes, and so he's pretty happy now, I think. But challenging life for small dogs sometimes.
Sure. How old is Vinny?
I think he's around 3 now.
Okay. All right. So still a young guy.
He's pretty young still.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you just mentioned your daughter there, and I just want to find out something about your daughter, because you told me something earlier today that's right around a very special day for her.
It was her 50th birthday, and if we go back just over a year ago from that, it was she almost. This is sometimes difficult to talk about because she had a stroke on the day 6 years later that my son died. Our son had a heart attack and died. I think I probably mentioned that earlier, and she had a stroke on the same day, a massive stroke. So when you've had that happen already, and then you go and see her in the hospital, and she's in a coma, don't recommend it. It's not fun. Definitely not fun for her. But she's a fighter and came through that. And so for her to have a 50th birthday is something extra special.
Right on. What is your daughter's name?
It's Danielle.
Danielle.
Yeah. She was born in Regina. She would never go back to Regina for some reason. I don't know. We lived in Saskatoon as well after Regina, and she went to school there. I think she had a happy enough school days and childhood. But she got married out here. She loves it out here, and so I don't think she'll ever go back to teaching. She was a fantastic teacher, and she is, whilst not 100% recovered from stroke, she is very good. She knows she's not recovered. Nobody else would know that she had a stroke at this point. So she's come out of it very well, with the help of her, mostly from her husband and her mother. Living on Pender, it's a little more challenging. You wonder if you made the right decision, but I still think I did, because me being a happier person means I'm happier around my daughter as well when I see her. So it's all going to be great.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's scary stuff, the idea of having a stroke, for sure, and especially at a relatively younger age.
Yeah. Of
course, right? But yeah, thanks for sharing those personal and intimate details, John. I appreciate you opening up and sharing those things.
What I was going to tell you is that the heart attacks in my family, my father and my son, both dying of heart attacks, and my brother having had a heart attack as well. I seem to be a very sneaky guy, and I've sneaked around the heart problems, and my heart apparently is like pretty damn good from somebody my age, and so I'm very fortunate like that, and I'm very thankful for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And maybe just to finish off, a happy belated 50th birthday to your daughter, by the way, who you said is going to be listening to this when it comes out in a little bit. But you said as well, too, that it was through the help of her husband and also her mother, your ex-wife, that she helped along with the recovery.
We're good friends, my ex and me, and she's been, I've been somewhat absent from my daughter's recovery, but my wife's been there every step of the way, so it's all good.
It's all good. Okay. And then being on Pender and making the choice to be here, you feel happy about that choice because you feel as if you're in a space that feels comfortable and you're surrounded by a lot of people.
I have a lot of friends, more than I realized, really. Yeah, it's good. It's all good.
More than you realized.
Yeah, really.
Nice.
Really. Sometimes you have acquaintances who become friends, or people that have worked for me who become friends. And I have a lot of those. If you go back in time to all the number of people that have worked at the store while I've been there, and right from Ava, who phoned me, God, how many years ago now? Probably 19 years ago, something like that, maybe 20, 21, I don't know. She was in Poland at the time, and she called me because she wanted a job. And if I had a job, she wanted it, because that's Ava, and she'll go after anything she wants. And so right through all the wonderful people who've worked there, they know who they are, right up to Nancy, who was there as I sold the place, and she stayed on for a while, and she was awesome. I won't give you all the names of the people that worked there, but Matilda was there, and a few other people you know.
Yeah. When we just talked before doing the interview, and I mentioned that the second traditional question I always get to is the people who've helped you along the way. You hinted at the fact the people who worked for you at Southridge were some of the greatest help that you received on this island, were your employees helping you along the way, some of the people who you just mentioned. But that's accurate to say that the people who have helped you the most on the island have been your employees?
Yes, I think they've been the ones that I've spent so much time with them on every day. They, like I said, Ava before, and Anne Ashton, and tons of people. Tons of people. I couldn't possibly. I'd have to have another evening of writing down stuff and of all the people that work for me, because there's so many friends that I've made as well that came and stayed in the house, and my goodness, just people I've met through other people that worked there or been friends there, and yeah, it's been a good life.
Nice. I think some people work in jobs where they're very isolated, and, they might work with the same handful of people for, 10 or 20 years, and there's no customers coming in. And it's interesting. It sounds as if, you had so many interactions with so many people along the way, and not to mention the employees that you just mentioned, and that is a very social environment.
There's so many people that I can't mention. Some of them worked one day a week. Some of them, did my books. I think they're all friends, really.
Just to get back to maybe when you first came to the West Coast, and
let me tell you just how that happened.
Okay, sure, yeah. So
I was working for a company, a printer of business forms in Calgary, actually, and I was not happy with the company that I decided to move to. So my old boss at some point called me up, and I said, "Well, where have you been? I haven't talked to you for ages." And he said, "Oh, well, I never had anything to offer you before." And I said, "Oh, yeah." He said, what do you think about Victoria? I'm not happy at this time, and I'm thinking, that sounds pretty damn good. I've been to Victoria once in my life, and I think I wouldn't mind giving it a try. So I didn't say that to him. What I said to him was, well, yeah, I'd have to take a look first. And he said, okay, well, we'll fly you out there, and you can spend a couple of days in a hotel. And I said, okay, sign me up.
Yeah.
So we went out, my wife and I went out and stayed at a nice hotel in Victoria and looked around, and the guy that was doing the job now, managing this small printing plant in Victoria, he was living in North Saanich, and we were able to rent the same house. As he moved out, we moved in, and so that worked out really well for us. And the job was fun and interesting for quite a few years. I can't remember how many years it was now. I remember I had my 50th birthday there, and the people were great. I really enjoyed the job. It was an actual printing plant, and so it was something that I'd been around printing equipment before, but I'd never, and I didn't have to use the equipment, but I had to understand it, and I did. So that was good. And then we did a lot of work with the government, and that was fun. We moved into this house in North Saanich, and then eventually we bought a house also in North Saanich, and lived there for quite a few years, fairly happily. Yeah.
Okay. I still love the story about you driving out west and having that experience of seeing the West Coast on that solo road trip. And
on a ferry. Yes, I mean, it was. I never thought that when I took that trip, that one-time trip from Vancouver to Victoria and back again, that I would be doing that trip and that ferry and those ferries every week for 21 years or whatever it was when I had the store. So, it was a completely different experience from living in Saskatchewan and Alberta. The terrain was different. The people are different too. And people say that people on the West Coast are a bit standoffish, but I never found that. I found them to be brilliant, lovely people. And everywhere I worked, it's all been good.
Right on.
Yeah.
Pivotal road trip in your life. Pivotal
great
moment.
Country. I'm
sorry?
It's a great country.
Yeah.
It's the only problem with Canada that I can see is too bloody big. It's, you lose friends. You can only talk to them on the phone. It's too far to go. Or it's, that's the only problem with it. Apart from that, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting in terms of traveling within the country. I think that people easily dismiss that idea that going to Quebec or the Maritimes or the Yukon, these are all beautiful, amazing places. And even within BC is huge. Vancouver Island itself is just filled with amazing things to see. And that there was a time in my life where I drove across the country back and forth twice in a 2-year span. And I thought everybody should at least do this once. It is amazing to see how it changes. But yeah, it's a beautiful country. But it is driving through Ontario for 3 days. My gosh.
Yes, I know it is. It is. I'm driving across the prairies. Yeah, it takes a long time, and it's somewhat boring. It's actually the prairies are not boring to me, but it can be to a lot of people. The whole place is great. When you come from a small island, like the UK, like England, and then you come, and now I'm living on a small island. It's a much smaller island. Yeah, but part of a huge, huge country. It's different. Yeah, but I love it.
Right on. Well, I think we're going to wrap this up, but I'm going to leave the last word to you, as I always do with people. Is there anything that you want to end off with and say to people listening to this podcast?
Nothing that springs to mind except, that it's been a joyful experience to live on Pender Island, and not 100%. There have been some, definitely some missteps along the way, but all in all, it's worked out really well. The people are lovely.
Right on. Well, thanks for coming in, and thanks for keeping Southridge going and having that place for us to go to. And always, every time I walk into Southridge, I think, I love that smell.
Yeah.
What is that smell, John? What is there a Southridge air freshener that you can sell, or
Team Spirit?
Teen Spirit.
I think that's what the smell is.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for coming in.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks very much to John for doing that interview. And to honor that interview, I decided that I would come down to McKinnon Beach. So McKinnon Beach is located on the North Island, and you have to drive up a short road by the name of McKinnon Road to get here. And there's a little ocean access with some stairs leading down. And the reason I decided I would come here is because, well, I don't know why I decided I would come here. Just intuitively, something drew me here today to wrap up John's interview. So while I've been here, I've seen a couple ferries go by, and thinking of John coming to the island for the first time on a ferry and his multiple trips ever since. And this is located near the ferry terminal, this beach. And along with being a really beautiful spot, I find it to be a super cleansing place. Every time I come down here, I feel really good as soon as I come down to the water. And I don't know if you can hear the water lapping up right now. It's the remnants of the waves of the ferry going by. So thank you for listening. Thank you to Ptarmigan for helping to sponsor this podcast. And until next time.